Okay, we're going to get started here in the interest of time. Thanks so much for coming today. I'm Robert Rose. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Integrative Conservation. And for those of you who are here who maybe don't know about us, we're an institute at William & Mary that works to slow global biodiversity loss by educating and professionalizing the next generation of conservation leaders and by increasing the capacity of our conservation partners. With support of other William & Mary centers, institute departments, and resource offices, each year the IIC produces this conservation speaker series, following a particular conservation theme. And this year we bring you events that honor William & Mary's Year of the Environment that highlight applied conservation or conservation in action. After today's talk, we will have some time for questions, and we are recording the talk and it will be available for viewing online approximately 1 week from now. And we ask that you do silence your cell phones so they don't interrupt. William & Mary acknowledges the indigenous people who are the original inhabitants of the lands our campus is on today. The Cherohanka Nottoway, Chickahominy, Eastern Chickahominy, Mattaponi, Monacan, Nansemond, Nottoway, Pamunkey, Patawamek, Upper Mattaponi, and Rappahannock tribes, and pay our respects to their tribal members past and present. So now I'm excited to introduce our first speaker for the semester. Colby Loucks joined WWF as an intern in 1996. An intern? Unpaid intern?
No, I needed money.
Oh, you need money, good. I'm glad they paid you. And is now the Vice President and Deputy Lead for the Wildlife Program and Director of WWF's Wildlife Technology Innovation Lab. So it does show you that you can start off as an intern and work your way up. The Innovation Lab focuses on identifying, piloting, and scaling innovative technology solutions to monitor biodiversity and stop poaching. Early in his WWF career, Colby led ecoregion conservation assessments for North America and the Indo-Pacific region, and landscapes and ecoregion planning analyses in the Eastern Himalayas, Indochina, Mexico, and China. Building on his expertise in GIS, conservation biology, and landscape ecology, Colby identified critical unprotected giant panda habitat in China's Shaanxi province. This work became the foundation for the Chinese government's decision to more than double the region's protected area to conserve giant pandas and biodiversity. Colby has led or contributed to conservation efforts such as the Global 200, Global Impacts of Protected Areas on Biodiversity and Humans, Impacts of War and Peace to Species Loss in Cambodia, prioritizing tiger conservation areas, predicting the impact of sea level rise on tiger populations in Bangladesh's Sundarbans, identification of critical migration corridors for pronghorn antelope in the USA's northern Great Plains, and the impact of forest certification on forest loss in Cameroon and Indonesia. Did we cover it all? It is my pleasure to welcome William & Mary biology alum, Colby Loucks. Welcome, Colby, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks. It's great to be back. Is this too loud, too soft? Feels like it's loud to me. Too loud. Just right. Perfect. All right, cool. So to get into it, so great to be here. Thank you for coming out. We'll just jump in. So I was thinking about this talk, and I went through slides. I think some of you knows what they are, and found this photo. And I think three things about this photo that struck me is this day was a pretty amazing day, and it kind of struck home three things. One, that the job I'd been doing for about a year and a half might be a job I wanted to continue to do. Two, that international conservation might be a place that I could continue to do as a career. And three, WWF, which was my employer, might be something I might want to stay around for a year or two. So you'll hear that I did stay around a bit more than a year or two. It's amazing because this day I'd been working on pandas for a little bit. We're in the Changqing Mountains. It's in snowy. I think I have a photo. I was at WWF for a while. I was just sitting in a GIS lab. I was not going anywhere. All the people around me were going to these amazing spots, and I'm just sitting there making maps, kind of frustrated, a little bit mad that I wasn't getting to do cool stuff. When WWF China came over and said, hey, we need someone to do a remote sensing analysis of these panda habitat in China, do you have anyone who can do it? And I literally was the only person there. And they're looking over and they're like, can you do it? And I'm like, yes, absolutely, I can do this. I had never done this. So, but I'm like, man, I'm going to go to China. I can leave Washington, D.C. So over the next 3 or so years, I'll go into some of the work I've did. But a little known fact, I've signed contracts with WWF. I have to stick a panda photo in every single talk I give. So here it is, your panda photo. Not true. But it is a good photo of a panda. The Chinling Mountains, which is where it's shown up there, is east-west mountains. Most of the rest of the panda habitat runs north-south. And so we're going to be talking about those mountains, which is where that photo was just now. And so I got a bunch of remote sensing images, some satellite imagery, and over the course of about 3 or 4 years, shuttled back and forth to China. And ultimately made a version of this map. And what it is the orange stuff is where panda habitat is. That's where there's still forest. There's bamboo that the panda eats. There's several bamboo species. The red polygons are where the protected areas are. And so a lot of where the pandas in this part, which is about 250 pandas, about a sixth of the population, were found here. So then I worked with WWF China, and from about 2001 to 2003, they lobbied the government of China, the Shanxi provincial government and the federal government. And then in 2003, 12 new protect areas created, 4 different types of corridors were created with special use permits, and essentially it was built on a lot of the work that I had done as my very first project at WWF as a scientist, and it was, helped to create about 12 protect areas, protect about 6 of the pandas. And that was like one of my most gratifying moments of my career. It's one of my first projects, so I feel like I came out high, strong, and then maybe for the rest of my career is just downslope, because this was amazing, and it was really great. So like, again, how did I get to be at WWF as an intern? How did I get to be in China? By the way, I've never seen a wild panda. This panda's not wild. It was in Wolong Nature Reserve, which had like a panda breeding facility where they would let pandas run around in like this couple hectare facility. An earthquake came out and just destroyed this whole area a couple years after this photo. But thinking about that, we did start at William & Mary. I was a biology major. Came in as a pre-med, maybe like all biology majors. Who's a biology major that's pre-med, right? Hand up, right? And I was like, after 2 years, I was like, yeah, no, this is not me. What am I going to do with a biology degree? I don't know. Started taking ecology classes, invertebrate biology classes, ornithology classes, and I started liking it. Graduating, I'm a senior, still no idea what I'm doing. And so I did what probably a lot of people do, is I'm going to go to more school. Where can I find a school? So I applied to Duke. I got in a graduate school there, the School of the Environment. Bought me 2 more years, a bit more of some debt, but it was allowed me to actually find a thing that did resonate with me, and I took a GIS class. And GIS class was just, was the thing for me. It's the way my brain was wired. I just thought in maps, and I didn't know it existed, which is to say, like, I took my first GIS class as a graduate student, and I'm so gratified that I think people who have the opportunity to take a GIS class today as like a sophomore or freshman, I don't even know. But that is what I did. Graduated from Duke, and then looking for a job, and they said, hey, come to WWF. We got 6-week internship. We want you to make some maps. And I was like, all right, I'm getting paid. I need some money. That's cool. So I went to DC and was just making maps. Not my dream job. I was just like, do you want cornflower blue or light blue on this ecoregion? I don't know. I don't care. But that was it. But what that did do is get me in the door. It got me in the place so that when everyone else is out doing cool stuff and they needed someone to do a GIS analysis of pandas, I was in the room. And so I've been asked to give a few tidbits of observations, deep-ish thoughts, if you will. And this is for everyone here, but maybe for more of the younger crowd. Yeah, your first job, I think, out of school is probably going to be one of the hardest you're going to get because you have limited experience. You're a wild card. People don't know what you're getting out of you or what you'll give to them or as the organization. So unlikely to be your dream job, but I'm just urging you to get out there, take the job, get your foot in the door. If it's an internship, if it's even close, grab it and get out there because that will build you to the next thing. It might be your dream job, and that's awesome. So get that experience, get out there, because I would never have been at WWF today had I not decided to take a 6-week internship making boring maps that allowed me to be there for this. And so this is really weird. Okay. I've been at WWF for 29 years as of last week. Long time, never thought. Like right back when I was in China, I was like, this would be a cool job for a couple of years. WWF was founded in 1961. This guy, whose name I can't remember right now, drew all those little panda photos, and this one became the first logo, and then that one in the middle is the logo that we have now. We're an international organization, working over 100 countries, shaded here. And then we're kind of like a franchise, so each country you see here is sort of its own WWF. It's like a Chipotle franchise, so we have the Chipotle here, each country. So the WFUS Chipotle WWF franchise, we have nearly 700 staff. Most of them are in Washington, D.C. We have a Great Plains program, which is located in Bozeman. We work on polar bears and coastal and community issues up in Alaska. And then we have San Francisco and Chicago. We have some just regional offices as well. So sort of what we're set up to do, our vision, a world where people and nature thrive. It's not just nature, it's people and nature. And you'll see a lot of our work involves, there's like they have to go hand in hand. Give you these goals. Don't need to memorize them, don't even look at them, but it's just all to say is we focus on the conservation part, zero loss of natural habitats, stopping the extinction of wildlife, but then we also focus on stopping the threat parts, the consumptions, the overconsumption, productions, greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera. So it's all to say we do a lot. We do a lot. And we're set up to deliver on that in this way. So we have these 6 general teams is how we deliver on those goals. I sit in the wildlife team, and so today you're going to hear a bit more about the wildlife work, but it's all to say there's amazing people doing amazing things, and each of these 5 other teams could come up here and talk equally long about all the other work we're doing here. So you're going to get a sliver of WWF's work through the wildlife lens, because that's my lens. But we do other amazing things around the world. So I am biased. So I think wildlife conservation is the heart of what we do. We are the World Wildlife Fund. So and our focus is, to make sure the wildlife thrives and the major threats to them are diminished. So I'm going to give a few examples of some of the work that we do, some of the work I've done, some of the work my colleagues have done, to give you a flavor of some of the wildlife-oriented work. But before I do that, when the first goal was to try to conserve the wildlife and threatened habitats, this is generally some of the stuff that we do. I'll touch on several of these things, but not all of them. Also, just to give you a flavor that, you're going to hear a sliver of stuff, but not all of it. And then the reducing the threats part, again, this is some of the work we do. I'll touch on some of these, but not all of them today. My first example is this effort called T times 2, which means doubling the number of tigers, essentially. So if you look here, you'll see the historic range of tigers, and then you'll see where they are more or less as of maybe 10 years ago or so. And so they have over 90% loss of habitat. They're kind of these islands of habitat. So with these trends going, and knowing that there's potential areas where they could expand that just aren't, in 2010, WWF, with a bunch of other organizations and governments, saw this downward trend. Around 2010 is probably the lowest number of wild tigers, around 3,200. And so we set the goal. Can we double the number of tigers? 2010, by the way, is the year of the tiger. So good comms. Can we double the number of tigers by the next year of the tigers, which is 12 years later, so 2022? And so that was a goal. And did we make it? No, we did not. But we did what we say, bend the curve. We got, there's a lot more tigers up there. It's almost the doubling the number of tigers. And I think if you talk to a lot of people who know about this, the fact that we didn't get there in the 12 years is almost I don't say irrelevant, but it wasn't the thing. It was the audacious goal, the long time frame, and the collective to try to get there. And I did learn earlier this year, so a few years later, like 3 years later, we have doubled the number. There's over 6,400 wild tigers. And so it gets to my other deepish thought in that this took like 12, 15 years to achieve this goal. Conservation is a long game. I feel like you need to be optimistic if you want to be in conservation, because there's a lot of ups and downs. There's paths that aren't even. But I think that if you get into this field, you can take heart that you can be a force for good. You can do things, what you are doing, but you're not, maybe not see an immediate, like, this is going to be a quick win. Even my panda example was like 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years from the start to the end. Yeah. So, okay. As I said, I lead the Technology Innovation Lab, and I think that's an exciting area for us and for conservation. The advancement and development of battery life, of computing power, of all these different sensors that are out there, of connectivity, the way you can connect things in the field is pretty exciting. That wasn't around even like 10, 15 years ago. And so at WWF, and particularly in the wildlife team, we're really leaning into potential ways of technology could support our work. So I'm going to give you a few examples. One of the examples I've been involved with is using putting a camera, which is this FLIR camera, on top of ranger vehicles to try to stop poaching. This FLIR camera is a thermal, which means it detects heat. It detects heat, so it doesn't need any light to see. So most poaching in Africa happens at night. It's very dark there. It's very confusing, and so when we're able to give a thermal camera to these rangers, they can see a mile or two away, no light needed. They can detect heat of animals. They can detect heat of people, and it allows them to engage and reduce the poaching of wildlife. We also do versions of this where we put them on towers and we connect them with AI around parks, around the perimeters to detect when people come into the park illegally. A little bit more complex. The AI helps. Basically, the AI looks and tells you what's there, so you don't have to sit there and look at screens all the time. I think this will be a video that kind of shows the control room, just to give you a sense of what, well, you're also going to get some Swahili. But you can see what these cameras do, and you can see in this middle one, there's people walking along the main things. And so it's just a sense of what we're looking at and dealing with. Big areas, trying to understand what's going on. You can see roads are hot even at night compared to around it. So this has been a pretty interesting project. I think it's been copied by others, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, so that's more of the anti-poaching and the trying to stop the poaching side of things. But I did want to talk about biodiversity monitoring, because I think that's more interesting and has a lot more upside and interesting going on right now. So I'll talk about these 3 types of biodiversity monitoring. I'm not going to talk about acoustics, but I could have. I could talk about social media. There's a lot of other stuff going on. But I'm just going to dig into these 3 things. So, environmental DNA is, or conservation genomics, I think my opinion is going to be one of the main exciting new avenues to monitor biodiversity in the next 10, 15, 20 years. What you can do is what my friend Arnaud here is doing, is just collecting water in the field, running it through a filter, and that filter captures the DNA. But there's other ways you can get DNA. We've been collecting DNA off of scat, poop, but you can get it off of hair, pollen, footprints in the snow, water. So anything that comes in touch with that water, if you walk through, like you're shedding DNA all the time. In fact, they now can get DNA out of air. So someone could come in here, well, they couldn't tell each individual, but they could collect and say, yes, there's humans in this air just by collecting the air. So I think it's in the early stages. People are trying to figure it out, processes, ways to do it, everything. So watch this space. Right now, it's a little bit complex. You go out and sample, then you extract your DNA, and then you amplify, because there's very small amounts of DNA are being collected, especially there's tons of bacteria and other stuff. And then you sequence it, and so you say, like if from your genetics class, if you've taken those things, it's A, T, T, C, G, etc. And then you look at, in this bioinformatics, and basically you have a library, or the Rosetta Stone of things that tells you this collection of DNA is equal to cougar, or this collection of DNA is equal to a bat. And so what you do is you do this bioinformatics analysis. And just to give you an example from Arnaud's work in Bhutan, so these little dots in the middle, he went and sampled 14 locations, 42 water samples, so it's like 6 to 8 rivers. This was done like in maybe a week. So for a week of work, he was able to collect, identify, like there's 3 reptiles, you can see it, you can read here, 325 different taxa. So, compared to that to other things like camera traps or other ways of doing biodiversity, in a week, he could tell you a lot more about some of these things than maybe weeks and months and seasons worth of collection with camera traps or some other ways, mark recapture or whatever. So that's why I think it's pretty promising. It doesn't tell you about abundance. It doesn't tell you how many are there. It just tells you if something's there. And then also, for you, those of you who have been thinking about it, it was like, well, depending where you get it, it's like the whole stream watershed of where you collected that. And so you get a ballpark of what's there. One of the things, I'm going to take a sidebar, and I'll come back to this in a sec. But it gets to my third thought, and that is, I had a question earlier today. I was like, well, what should I do, and what do I do after William & Mary, and things like that. And ultimately, you need to find out what you like. And you don't need to figure that out right away, but you got to find something you enjoy, even love. I said it earlier, I might have loved GIS. I don't know if I loved it. It was a computer program, but I did enjoy doing that. And I think you need to help you align your passions with what you're doing. So again, for maybe some of the younger folks here, it's okay to meander and figure it out, and it might take you a while, but if you're going to be doing something 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, it'd be awesome if you're doing that on something you really enjoy and you love and you like, and there's many different paths in conservation that you can find that. And so for me, I got into conservation so I could do this, yes, Zoom calls. This is my Monday, this was just 2 days ago, my boss. And I bring it up because I think every job you have, there's going to be some part that, all right, kind of sucks, right? And not that if she ever watches this, not good. But that's just part of life, and that's part of the equation. You probably talk to your professors. I'm sure they've been in faculty meetings that they're like, this is no good. But when you start out, get out in the field, try to find that passion or wherever you want to do that you love, but know there's going to be some parts that are not going to be good, and that just comes with the territory. But also, hopefully you get to do this, which is where I was 5 days ago, which is out in the Chiricahua National Wildlife Refuge out in Arizona. And what we're doing here with my colleagues is eDNA surveys looking for jaguars, because I don't know if you know, but every now and then jaguars are popping across from Mexico into the United States, and increasingly we've seen more in the last 5 or 6 years on camera traps than we've had in the first perhaps 10, 15, 20 years. And so our thought was, well, what if they're not running in front of the camera trap? So we were going out and working with the University of Arizona to do some surveys to see if we can find pools where we can collect eDNA and see if there's actually jaguars in some of these areas that would be likely areas that they would come to drink, because it's very arid, very, it's a desert. So this is us just a few days ago. And what we're trying to do with this technique is essentially take it from what I showed you there is you go out and you collect them, you send them to some Western lab in Europe or United States. They do all the analysis and they give you a list of species. What we think would be amazing is, can you democratize that? Can you get that into the hands of the community? Can you get that away from just having to send it to some Western lab, which also, by the way, is kind of gets a little bit funky because if they think it's an endangered species, then you're not allowed to send labs or water. It's a little bit crazy. So what we want to do is, can you come up with that and come up with a process where day 1 you collect it, day 2, day 3 you extract it, day 4 you can sequence it, and day 5 you got your answers, and you never have to send it to a lab. You do it there. And so anyways, that's what we're trying to do here, in addition to looking for jaguars. But I want to know, look at my face. Am I happy? Yes, because I'm not in a Zoom call. I'm not doing budgets. And so mostly I was show you this face because, and again, that's why I got into it, and that's why I'm happy about it, and I get those opportunities, and I've had those opportunities throughout my career at WWF. And so again, find something that makes you happy, even though there's sometimes there's going to be part of your jobs that's not the greatest. Okay, talk about another thing. So I kind of disparage camera traps. They're amazing. We're doing something cool with AI. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, called Wildlife Insights. So the part on the left is what you get when you get camera traps. That's like a bunch of photos of grass moving. Super not useful. Also a waste of time when you go and download your card or it gets sent to you and you've got 700 photos, 695 of them are moving grass. What we really want is that photo of the koala recolonizing an area that was burned just a few years ago. So we worked in this consortium with a bunch of other NGOs to create this platform called Wildlife Insights. I think this might be a video. Just going to sort of show it to you. The gist is, it allows you to upload your photos, and it basically tells you everything that's in your photo. What's an animal, what species it is, how many there are, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if I play this, you'll see essentially an example in South America. So you can kind of get into your photos. This is like, you could go into it right now and get this. It'll tell you like how many images there are, how many species, how many total species are found, identifies what species are there. You can see the AI kicking in and telling you and showing you day or night, etc. You can put your backyard camera traps in this thing. Yeah, saves times. We figure out it's like 10 times faster, so you can either do everything 10 times more, or you can go 10 times further. You can find all the jaguar species in your camera trap photos. So pretty cool leveraging AI to help expedite and perhaps, I think, improve the accuracy of the work, because they can definitely say like, that's a jaguar, that's a jaguar butt or something like that. So and that's another tech that I really love. I think that's really cool. So many applications to it. You can and then you start connecting these. What if we put eDNA and camera traps and a GIS map and a remote sensing map and a proposed dam, et cetera? So you can start to see how some of this stuff comes together. I've kept this in only to say there's like over 3,000 projects. They've identified over 4,000 species. They have 83 million wildlife images out of 253 images. Lots of sequences, 191,000 cameras around the world. You can go on there right now, and some of it's data protected, but you can get into it. Another cool tech that I think is really cool that we're using and learning and using AI with. My last tech example is this idea of this science to policy, which I kind of alluded to with the pandas, but it's talking about where I work, my colleague Robin. This is Southern Africa. It's called Kaza. It's the Kavango, Zambezi area. Essentially, it's, for those of you who are totally spun up on your Southern Africa, you got Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, 5 countries. It's the largest elephant population in the world, and what it does is they move around the countries. Most countries here have fences and prevent the movement. So the movement of elephants in particular is constrained by veterinary fences as well as fences along the borders of these countries, and that's a problem. And so what he did and started in 2016, after a lot of collaring of elephants himself, was try to develop a consortium of people. And this was amazing because people who it's expensive to put an elephant collar on. And he got over 20 organizations, I think over 100, 150 individual elephant collars to all contribute data. So kind of one of those things that, you can run fast by yourself, but you can run far together. And so they are going to run far. So they got all this data. This is the best elephant data set in the world, finding where all this movement is between different times of the year, between different protected areas. And what this did and started, again, a long-term thing, is 2016, 2023, this policy brief came out. Not very sexy. Policy brief also might not be the most sexiest thing in the world, but what this did is all 5 countries at this prime minister or presidential level, based on this data, agreed to try to find ways to facilitate and enable elephant movement throughout all of these countries. So on one hand, boring policy brief, but super important because you basically got the absolutely top level of these countries agreeing to work together to figure out something that they've been never working on previous. And that was made possible by all of this science, all of this collaboration, all these people coming together and talking for 7 years to get to that part. Also, collaring is pretty cool and fun and really interesting. And there's probably there's 10 PhDs right here on this screen. So give me a call, I'll get you in touch with Robin, he'll give you the data. I'm going to end on this part by just throwing a shout out. If you're interested in wildlife technology, you should check this place out, wildlifelabs.net. It's the conservation technology network, as they say. But what their goal in life is to say, look, if you're interested in technology, we know there's people all around the world. We don't want them to reinvent the wheel. We want them to collaborate. And so it's a collaboration space where you can ask the most basic question and someone from somewhere maybe has dealt with it. So there's communities about literally every kind of tech out there. You can join, answer questions. They're now getting, they have now funding. They have funding mechanisms where they're getting funding and they're sending out funding. So if you're interested in conservation technology, you should check this out because there's a community for you. And there's maybe even some money for you if you go on to do more work. I've just talked a lot about tech. I've talked a lot about wildlife. But I would say going forward, I think the biggest chance for success for conservation is working with communities. In many areas, we've put protected areas, nature reserves, parks, where they're going to be, with maybe an asterisk around the oceans. I think there's still space for increasing ocean protected areas. But moving forward, we're going to probably have to work with the people outside of those nature reserve protected areas, and that's going to be with community conservation and some version of that. And so we have a lot of projects. I have little time, so I'm just going to talk about one that our team's working on called Climate Crowd. And this is a really interesting thing, and that is, like, how can we help wildlife adapt to a changing climate? And the theory is, we don't need to help wildlife. We need to help people adapt to a changing climate so they don't have negative impacts on wildlife. And that's what this project is in part about. And that's trying to get out and talk to communities. You can see there's dots all over there. There's over 4,000 conversations. And saying, how is climate change impacting you? What is the impacts of climate change? Finding out from them, and here you can see different stats on some of this stuff. Finding out from them how climate change is impacting them, how is it affecting their livelihoods, how is it affecting their economic well-being, and things like that. And then going on and say, well, are there ways that we can creatively and co-create with those communities to help them? Maybe it's putting in a borehole for water, or maybe it's helping with them with alternative livelihoods, maybe setting up some bees or whatever. And so it's a way to try to help reduce the impact of climate change to them, as well as reduces their negative impact and potential for human-wildlife conflict, it's things like that, and find those ways that we can improve community conservation, reduce human-wildlife conflict, adapt to climate change, support wildlife conservation. So this is just one of many, many, many ways WF is working with communities, and like I said, my personal opinion is that's where the action is going to be over the next 10 years. And so this is, I think, a pretty cool project. Again, this is online at that website I just showed. I can send it to you later, and is really cool. You can get the data and do some cool things. So that leads me back to my last deep-ish thought. And I think that today, more than maybe in the past, that conservation is a big tent. There's going to be so many ways that you all could and still can find a career in conservation if you want it. There's 115 majors at William & Mary. All 115 majors could be a pathway to conservation. And so while I did maybe the most traditional one with a biology degree, literally almost any other degree, you can find a way into conservation. And just give you some examples. We have a new hot button topic is this project finance for permanence, one of the maybe more terrible acronyms. And essentially what it's trying to do is say, hey, let's work with the governments to find out what they need to run their protected area system, for example. And what is the total cost of running the protected area systems for 20 years? And it's going to be a big number. And that's from everything biodiversity monitoring to rangers to whatever, to tourism. And let's say that number is $100 million. And what we'll say is, okay, if the total cost is $100 million, we'll raise $50 million. And we'll take the front end, and we through us consortium, will pay the initial cost, and it'll be sinking. So that by year 20, the government will have 100%. And so you need a lot of, it's complex. You need one, a lot of money. You need two, government buy-in, governance, making sure the money goes to where it needs to go. You need people to disperse it, etc. I bring this all up to say is, if you have a management degree, your skills are needed. Business degree, here. Law degree, here. Biodiversity degree, here. Project management degree, yes. If you speak Spanish or some other country or other languages, or yes, you can have it here. So just an example of the big tent of a lot of the people that work on this, none of them have a biology degree, which actually, on the down low, kind of annoys me because I feel like I could help out. But they are amazing stuff and doing great stuff in here. And it's just a lot of non-science degrees are here. Another one is infrastructure. There's I was supposed to look this up, forgot. Some billions and trillions of dollars of infrastructure is going to be planned over the next decade or two. A lot of it in Asia and Africa. So we're talking dams and roads and power and trains and et cetera. And yeah, a lot of that is needed, but there's better and worse ways to put in infrastructure. And some are maybe more friendly to wildlife, or some are more friendly to climate change, or whatever. But the point is, if you're an engineering major, your skills are needed. If you are interested in finance, business, again, anthropology, wildlife movements, chemistry, finding ways to getting concrete made that's not as negative to the carbon sequestration. There's a lot of interesting ways that you can find your way into this kind of work. Nature-based solutions is a pretty hot topic. Basically, how can nature help support communities, support wildlife, and keep carbon and ecosystem services thriving? And so, for example, mangroves are really good at stopping the effects of typhoons and hurricanes on inland systems. So it's a nature-based solution, i.e. something that was around before us. And so this is also good. But again, this is another really interesting area where if you're into data sciences and AI and mapping and GIS, as well as financing and working with private sector engagement and law and et cetera. So again, 115 majors here. All of them can find a way into some of these areas. If you are a communications major, an education major, if you are a major in Chinese or some other things, communications is so critical to the work we do, and these are just some of the marketing and communications we have. I think very fun and interesting. But again, the communications, there's so many avenues. Before it was like one, maybe the internet or a paper. But now with social media, the divergence of social media, websites, and all these other things, really people are really good and clever at communications and how to get, or being able to translate the science to the policy, the science to the layperson. There's a career in like scientific journalism, and how you can make, sometimes the science is a little bit dense, right? And so how can you get some dense science that is really cool translated to someone who is not a scientist care about it? And that's actually cool, because if no one knows about what you're doing, yeah, are you doing it? So that's that. And then I'm going to end with this photo of this kid. So this is me. And I definitely, at this point in my life, had no idea, graduating from William & Mary, no idea what I want to do, no idea what places or where I was going to go. But I would all to say is that I think William & Mary has set me up for success, set me up for confidence in myself, and set me up for finding a path that eventually I did find. And I encourage all of you to find that path, whether it comes to you today, whether it comes to you later, but find the things you're happy, whatever makes your heart sing, just grab that and just go. And so I don't want to stay with my photo of me, so I'll move to a nice photo of McCall I. Say thank you very much for everyone for being here, and I think we have some time for some questions.
Thank you, Colby. We do have time for questions. We're going to bring a microphone around to the stage.
Hi, thank you for being here today. I was curious if you could speak a little bit to the interconnectivity between the different departments that you showed, like there's wildlife conservation and oceans, and I'm from VIM, so I'm thinking about how there's a lot of interconnectivity between like ocean processes and natural resources and conservation, and I just want to know how those teams work together.
Yep. So did everyone hear the question? Yeah, pretty good. Great question. And well, I think pretty good. We try to find different mechanisms and ways to connect. If I'm being completely honest, and I probably should be, I think we get in our silos, right? I'm in the wildlife department, you're in the oceans department. And sometimes those connections don't always happen naturally. And so I think you have to be very cognizant about that and force yourself to find and put yourself out there and connecting. I would also say that it's prior to COVID, I was in the office 5 days a week. I was running into people a lot more frequently. And in fact, our oceans team is interspersed in the place, in the part of WFI work in DC. So I would see oceans people all the time. COVID happened, and then after COVID, we're in hybrid, so we're 2 days a week in the office. And so I may or may not hit or connect with people as much, I certainly do not as much as before, as in like 2019 or so. So I think that's also a challenge. So basically, I think we have a lot of great synergy, but I think there could be more synergy. and there's just other external factors that I think you just have to like know and acknowledge and overcome to do our work.
Hello, thank you for being here. How do you anticipate the increasing commodification of restoration with like carbon credits and biodiversity credits impacting how you fund your projects going forward, especially with the new biodiversity credits in your field?
Yeah. Good hot topic. So I'll start with carbon credits. I'm not a carbon credit expert. I'm not a biodiversity credit expert either, but I think the carbon credit market, the voluntary market, has had some ups and downs. I think there's even been like some exposés showing things not working. I do think what they're trying to touch on is the bigger picture that we are underfunding biodiversity, we're underfunding conservation. And so people are trying to find and develop different mechanisms to support and commodify, if you will, conservation, trying to find ways for companies to invest and support maybe commitments they make to their environmental commitments. Biodiversity credits, super new. They just came out of the Global Biodiversity Forum the last few years. It's even harder because the carbon credit, you're like, here is a chunk of carbon. This is a tree. We have science that tells you this is X amount of carbon. But like biodiversity, what is that? Could it be a bunch of salamanders? Do you want a jaguar? Do you want everything? Like what is the biodiversity? And so I think the metric for biodiversity credits is super weird and harder. And and I think because of that, and we're not even getting into the oceans bit as much, to figure out like what is that? Personally, I am not a big fan of the biodiversity credits. I'm also not an economist, another great skill that would work here. But because I feel like what I'm seeing, there's a lot of effort into biodiversity credits, and it's cool. But I also feel like there's a lot of middlemen. Like there's companies that want to set themselves up to be like, hey, community, I will help figure out your biodiversity credits, but I'll also take 90% of the funds that were supposed to go to you. I'm making up numbers. And so I think I would be interested to see what happens to biodiversity credits. If they go nowhere, I wouldn't be surprised. Unless it has to be some like laws, like some countries have basically legislated that you have to do these offsets or something, and then I think they're very viable.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. So you just talked about that almost any kinds of measures can be related to the conservation field, but I was wondering like how my majors could be related, because currently I am double majoring in kinesiology and psychology, and I feel like that is some kind of pathway that is lined parallel with conservation. So I feel like my majors focus more on like solving problems for humans, while conservation focus on solving problems for animals. So I'm not sure how my majors can, be used in the conservation field.
Yep, fair question. First off, I think psychology there's a very clear connection. I would also say that I think the conservation field today has to be more about like the vision WF, but others, is how do the people and nature thrive? We can't just be about the animals. We have to be about the people and animals, and because that's where the rubber hits the road, where in these communities, etc., or private lands. A lot of something we do, we have illegal wildlife trade. So an elephant gets poached in Africa. The horn is shipped to, let's say a rhino gets poached in Africa, the horn is shipped to Vietnam, and it's being used for a bunch of stuff. We've done work that's like, who is using that rhino horn? And what we need there is people who have understand how people think, the psychology major. And so what is the behavior? How do we change the behavior? Why are they taking the rhino horn? Oh, they're taking the rhino horn to impress at business meetings. They are dropping it into tea or snorting it or whatever, right? So if that's your user, knowing the psychology of why that person wants it and how you can change it and behavior change is very important. And then if kinesiology is a good one, I have to think through that one a little bit longer. But I think there's definitely ways. I think the behavior change is very exciting and hard. But I think psychology is definitely lands in that easy.
Thank you so much again for being here. It really is an honor. My main question was for students looking into conservation job opportunities or internship opportunities, what are recommended steps or resources to get those, and especially for those who want to work in contact with animals or specifically flora and fauna, like in field work?
Great question. All right, we'll start with WWF. We have a bridge internship program where it's for undergrads, actually, undergrad and grad. So that will come out probably in January. And there's a number of them that are offered to every department. So the wildlife team gets like 2 or 3, forest team 2 or 3, oceans team, et cetera. The communications team, et cetera. So that's fully paid intern WWF called the Bridge Intern. Google it, you'll figure that out. I think a lot of other NGOs are like TNC, CI, Audubon, WCS, et cetera, WRI. Some of them are less focused on wildlife, but maybe more on like WRI is a lot about forests, but there's wildlife. So I think worth just checking those out. It's a weird time, but I think there are, or maybe will be, government opportunities for field research. A lot of, like the Civilian Conservation Corps would be one. Again, I'm not up to the status on all of these things right now. But the Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Forest Service, they definitely need seasonal employees. They need people that want to come out and look for salamanders in like the Sierra Madres or something. So I think those are all opportunities. There's a thing called Presidential Management Fellows, which is a pathway to government service. Again, I'm not sure the status of that right now. I think those would be my big ones. There's definitely opportunities out there. I think the government one is the ones, and I don't know about state governments, but the federal government used to have a lot of opportunities. I just don't know where they stand at this moment.
For students that are interested in that, if you go to ESA, the Ecological Society of America, and sign up for their listserv, Ecolog L, they advertise the jobs that Colby's talking about, and they send it automatically to your email list, so that's a good resource. Yep.
Time for 1 or 2 more questions if anybody has one. While you're thinking, I do want to know, based on the question earlier, the IIC is running a winter course on behavior change. So if you want to apply your psychology degree and learn about behavior change, it's a winter course in DC with one of our conservation partners. Well, then I want to thank everybody for coming. Thanks to Colby for being here. And stick around if you have any more questions you want to come up and meet up.